And these government employees, by talking to these Doge workers, they have to justify their employment to the individuals who've been hired to figure out which jobs are essential and which jobs are not essential. And some of these government workers are saying this is causing extreme anxiety. Politico said this. It said 3 General Services Administration employees, all of whom spoke to Politico and anonymously out of fears of retribution, because remember, under Trump's new hiring laws, you can be fired for not going through the proper channels of whistleblowing. And if you're talking to the media underhanded like this, you can be fired under Trump's new rules. It says these people spoke to them right anonymously for fear of retribution. It said they described their and their subordinates' recent interviews with Musk's Doge agents as potentially career-ending, with federal employees feeling like every word they're saying could be grounds for future dismissal. They're saying things, being asked questions, and they're feeling like, oh, I'm going to be fired for every word I'm saying. It said the behind-the-scenes agency, Doge, handles the federal government's real estate, software, and logistics, the agencies people are part of. So Musk and his team's efforts to trim GSAs, one that, again, they say may not be essential, could have a domino effect across the government. They're suggesting you pull out this little Jenga piece, the tower's going to come crumbling down, right? And here's what one of them said. They said the interviews are anxiety-provoking. That's a GSA supervisor whose employees were recently interviewed by a Doge worker. It says the tension swells the moment a worker receives a calendar invite from a Gmail account, they said, quote, frequently with almost no notice and often scheduled over existing client meetings. Probably online meetings because it's work from home, right? Only 6% show up. It says also, there are also reports coming out on how things look on the ground. Bloomberg News, for example, Bloomberg noted a case with the Small Business Administration, which allegedly told people they were all fired, and then said that no, you're not fired. Don't worry, it was just an error, and then fired them all again. So you're fired, you're not fired, and then you're all fired. That's how the messaging from Doge went, basically. Now, look, in other news, though, the FBI says it has found an additional 2,400 records on the assassination of former President John F. Kennedy. And new details coming out suggest there may have actually been a second shooter. Some people may have suspected this for a long time. I know there's been a lot of analysis on this. They're now saying it. And now the Trump administration, they are launching a new investigation into the assassination of JFK. The documents that were just found by the FBI, they are in compliance with an executive order from Trump that requires the release of the classified files on the assassination. And importantly on this, Trump's first term in office, he actually ordered the release of these documents as well, and the FBI refused to do it. They refused. They just did not follow the president's order last time. This time, they're now acting immediately, and we may actually get some answers on it. And alongside this as well, we're also getting some new details, or maybe, for some of you out there, this would just be confirmation of what has long been believed. It turns out, as I briefly mentioned, there may have been a second shooter. This was mentioned, in fact, publicly by Representative Anna Pauline Luna, a Republican from Florida, during a House Oversight Committee press conference on Tuesday. Watch this.
The initial hearing that was actually held here in Congress was actually faulty in the single bullet theory. I believe that there were 2 shooters, and we should be finding more information as we are able to gain access into the SCIF, hopefully before the files are actually released to the public.
The information is not public just yet. We'll have to wait and see what it actually says, but this does suggest there could be more to the JFK assassination than we've been publicly told for all these years. And for a lot of people who've been interested in this, it could be confirmation of what has long been believed. And also, speaking of assassinations, Donald Trump has also ordered the release of all information on the assassination attempts that he faced when he was on the campaign trail. Now, we mentioned before, this will include information on the 2 shooters well as information on the alleged assassination threats from Iran. And ahead of the release of this information, there's actually some new reports coming out. Daily Wire said this. It says the Islamic Republic of Iran's efforts to assassinate President Donald Trump were far more extensive than previously reported, as was the president's fear of having another attempt on his life. In his forthcoming book, Revenge, the inside story of Trump's return to power, political reporter Alex Insindet said that he was given access extensive access to Trump's inner circle during his campaign. It said this, quote, law enforcement officials warned Trump last year that Tehran, Iran, had placed operatives in the U.S. with access to surface-to-air missiles. He wrote in a report published at Axios and said, quote, Trump's team worried that the Iranians could try to down his easily recognizable personal jet, better known as Trump Force One, as it was taking off or landing, meaning the Iranian potential assassins, and they've actually arrested several alleged Iranian assassins, including in New York City. They had access to missiles that could have shot down an airliner. And said, quote, they're concerned that Iran would try to shoot down his airplane intensified after he survived a foiled assassination attempt at his golf course in Palm Beach, Florida, from a guy who had, 6 cell phones. It adds as well, the threat was so serious that at least on one occasion, Secret Service made Trump fly on a different plane rather than his own, suggesting that they were in fact deeply concerned that this was a reality, that they could do this. It adds also, there was another incident that had not been previously disclosed in which Secret Service shot down a drone that had been following Trump's motorcade using an electromagnetic gun that disabled it. Now look, remember, when Trump was on the campaign trail, he was briefed by federal authorities, and he was told, Trump came out and said this publicly, he was told there was an Iranian plot to assassinate him. Now, in response to that threat, Trump made a request to the then Biden administration for presidential level security detail, and he deemed that was important because the presidential level would give him additional protection from global threats. And if Iran was threatening, that would have been a global threat. His request for that to the Biden administration was denied. He was not given that additional protection. Well, everyone, that's all for tonight. Thank you for joining us. And as always, please take care of yourselves.